Good morning, everyone. So, this is our history class for today, and today we are going to start the second chapter of your history portion, that is the Vedic period. Okay. Now, in the Vedic literature, as you can see, you have very small portions of this chapter, but whatever is there, we are just going to discuss that. So, from the sources of Vedic literature, like from where do we find out or we get information about the Vedic literature? Okay, so the basic and the most important source of getting information about the Vedic, which is the earliest form of literature in our Indian culture and tradition, is the four Vedas, okay. And among all the four Vedas, the Rig Veda is the oldest one. The other three Vedas are the Atharva Veda, Samaveda, and the Yajur Veda. So before we go into the other Vedas, as you can see over here, early Vedic literature is got from the information is got from the Rig Veda, which is the oldest Veda, and therefore it is called the first testament of mankind. Now, historians place its period of composition as 1500 BCE, and it is divided into 10 mandalas. So, these are the different areas from where how the Vedas are being divided and from where do we get which kind of information. So, what do we find in the Vedas? We find in the Vedas there are 1028 mantras or hymns which were written in praise of various gods representing various aspects of nature. So it contains the Gayatri mantra. So much of the Indian philosophy is based on the Rig Veda. So it is the most important of all the Vedas. Now the later Vedic literature is found from the other three Vedas, which are the Samaveda, the Yajur Veda, and the Atharva Veda. The Samaveda, as the word Sama means sweet songs. So there are hymns. Hymns means musics which are being dedicated to gods and goddesses, and which are these hymns or the mantras which are being chanted during the worship of gods and goddesses. So these hymns are found in the Samaveda, and it is meant for the priests who used to sing while performing the yagyas. Okay, so there are about 1875 hymns in the Samaveda. In the Yajur Veda, there is basically the hymns which describe the rituals to be observed while performing the yagyas or the sacrifices. 2086 hymns are present over here. And then we have the Atharva Veda, which are the charms and spells for subduing the evil spirits and controlling the diseases. So now you know that our entire beliefs, the traditions, the culture, and the rituals which is based, the Indian tradition which is based on these rituals, culture, tradition, have all its basis from all the four Vedas. Okay. So in the Vedas also we come to know about the different caste systems which were prevalent at the time. Okay, but we will not go into the details as you don't have this in your syllabus. So just know the names of the castes which were being present over there. So based on their profession, we have in the early Vedic period, we have the castes like the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, Upanishads. These are the different parts of the Vedas which tells details of the political, religious life of the different types of castes of the people who were present at that time. Okay, we have the Brahmanas, we have the Aranyakas, we have the Upanishads and all, the Sutras and all. Okay. So we are not going into the details. So the next portion, the next sources of the Vedic literature which we will go into are the great epics. So you know the great epics, that we have the two most great important epics of the whole world, the earliest ones, that is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So we many of us follow the Bhagavad Gita and all. So what are those? These are the hymns which were followed for the gods and goddesses, the beliefs and practices which were based on these great epics written by the great sages of those times. Okay. So the Ramayana and Mahabharata, I think most of you will know that Ramayana and Mahabharata, the principles which were being followed by Lord Ram or Shri Krishna and the others, those are only what we follow in our Bhagavad Gita, the way to rule, way to lead our lives. Okay. So these great epics describe the lives and exploit of the great heroes of the Aryans. They provide historical significance as provide sufficient information about the social, religious, economic and political life of the later Aryans. These, the great heroes depicted in the epics are embodiment of high moral principles. So the Bhagavad Gita, which is a part of the Mahabharata, explains the philosophy of karma and immortality of the soul as well as devotion to the Almighty. So all the basis of our beliefs and rituals and customs and traditions are based on these great epics as well as the Vedas. Okay, so this is all about the sources of the Vedas, from where we get the information. We only have one more thing in your syllabus, which is the life of the people, and we have a comparison of it during the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. As you can see in this on screen, I have presented a comparison of the types of life which were led by the people in the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. You need not go into the details of all these things as you have it in your book, but just knowing the comparison of what is being there. So in the early Vedic period was a very rich culture. Okay, the early Vedic period was a time of a very rich culture. As you can see, the caste system was very flexible and based on profession rather than birth. So what the people used to do based on that profession, the caste was decided. But in the later Vedic periods, the caste system became very rigid, it became very complex, and that started with birth being the main criteria. Means if you are born in a low family, you are being considered a low caste person. If you are born in a high family of higher caste, then you are given respect and love. So this was very rigid during the later Vedic period. There was no concept of Shudra or untouchables in the early Vedic period. In the early Vedic period, since it was not by birth that people are formed with deformities and all, so that was because it was highly philosophical in that time. So that is why the concept of untouchables or belonging to low caste, or if you are having any physical deformities in your body, that doesn't mean that you are an untouchable, which was a matter in the later Vedic period, because Shudras became a mainstay in the later Vedic period. Their sole function was to serve those of the upper class. So they were considered to be the servants. Since they were considered to be born of low castes, of low categories, so they were considered to be the lowermost caste, and they were disrespectful towards them, and they were considered the untouchables. And the fact was only that they were only considered to be serving the upper caste people. Regarding the position of women in the early Vedic period, as you can see, women were allowed a greater degree of freedom in this period. They were allowed to participate in the political processes of the time to a certain extent. But in the later Vedic period, women were restricted from their participation in society by being relegated to subordinate and docile roles. So their only roles which was considered important was maintaining the household and bringing up children, which was a matter in the later Vedic period. But in the early Vedic period, it was only a matter that women would be participating in the great aspects of the societies, whether it's knowledge, whether it's politics, whether it's home ground, everywhere, every sector. Okay. Kingship was fluid, as the kings were elected for a fixed period by the local assembly known as the Samiti. In the later Vedic period, as society became more urbanized, okay, the need for stable leadership was realized. The absolute rule of the kings became more and more prominent. In the early Vedic society was pastoralist and semi-nomadic in nature. As you can see, they used to be only dependent upon cattle rearing, agriculture and all. So that was the profession. But in later Vedic period, so society became more settled in nature and became centered around agriculture in general. Okay, pastoralist before in early Vedic period, it was only cattle rearing and all that was mainly given prominence. In the early Vedic period, the barter system was more prevalent, with little or no monetary value transaction being part of the exchange. So barter system, I think most of you understand what is a barter system. It is the exchange of goods with goods. So it is not the exchange of money with goods. Okay, so that was the barter system which was much prevalent in the early Vedic period. While in the later Vedic period, the barter system was in practice, but it was largely replaced by exchange of gold and silver coins, which was called Krishnala. Okay, so now the concept of money, although did not come into being, but the concept of exchange of goods with gold and silver coins was being prevalent. Next, the early Vedic period. The Rig Veda is the original text, is the earliest text, And as I told you, the later Vedic period, we have the other three Vedas, that is the Yajur Veda and the Samaveda and the Atharva Veda. So these are the changes in the political, social and the regional beliefs of the people during the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. So just go through the portions in your book which you have, and for a better understanding of the chapter. And if you have any more doubts, we'll definitely have a discussion during your offline classes. So that's all for today. Have a nice day. Thank you everyone.